To a very select few, the plunge into peace meant the rebirth of such expensive hobbies as big yacht racing. Even in those days of fabulous personal fortunes, only the odd millionaire could afford to build and sail such graceful boats as the Shamrock. The Shamrock was the plaything of a tea millionaire, Sir Thomas Lipton. His idea of celebrating the newfound peace was to take his yacht across to the United States to win back the America's Cup. Another yachtsman was Signor Marconi, the radio expert. His work in the past had revolutionized wartime naval operations. Now, what new marvel was to come next? Messages to the moon, some claimed. One thing was sure. Fire brigades need no longer remain out of touch with their bases when dealing with distant conflagrations. First, all they needed was an aerial. And for that, any tallish structure would suffice. The next thing was to spread out on the ground a kind of mattress. Don't ask me why, I'm not technically minded. This is engine number 235, ready for action. But tell us, where's the fire? For those of mechanical bent, 1920 offered plenty of new scope. Up and down the hills of Britain went cars and motorcycles. Rallies, races, and trials were now on all the sports calendars. Yes, for the internal combustion enthusiasts, the road ahead looked interesting. The first petrol station in the country was opened by the Automobile Association, and from its first day did a brisk trade. The first of the post-war years showed from the start that the days of the horse on the roads of Britain were well and truly numbered. There was a new spirit ahead, one called gasoline, with all its attendant smells, smoke, honk and clatter. There was much new technical gossip of gearboxes and gaskets and much putting on of caps back to front. Cars were the thing. Cars could go anywhere, even to places where no vehicle had ever been before. Cars were wonderful. You could do anything with cars. Thus was Britain when Parliament was officially opened by the King, full of confidence in the peace and ready to go. On the agenda there were, admittedly, a few knotty problems to solve. But what of it, when till now all your solving had been by shellfire, gas attacks and bombs. Politics after that were easy meat. Easy. In London, Premier Lloyd George inspected the Royal Irish Constabulary. With them, operating in Ireland, was another force, known by the uniforms it sported as the Black and Tans, a force of tough-minded volunteers for service in an unhappy land. For Ireland was an unhappy land. The failure of the Easter Rising in 1916 had meant only that resistance had gone underground. Through the years following, rising again and again to the surface. In Dublin's fair city, armored cars were used to break up hostile and unruly mobs of demonstrators. It might have been effective, and no doubt it gave the drivers a sense of power, but in truth, it was really no way to rule a fair city. In the northern counties of Ulster, the spirit was of loyalty. The Orangemen wanted no part of rebellion or split with Britain. But in the south, it was quite another story. Sinn Féin, ourselves alone. On the same day, the unknown warrior arrived in Britain. A rebel in Ireland tore down the Union Jack. His guards with revolvers at the ready, hands tied behind his back. He was forced to return that same flag and put it up again from whence it came. It was no way to celebrate Armistice Day. Outside Dublin's Mountjoy prison, holding so many of their friends, angry crowds showed the spirit of their city by demonstrations that only heavy armor could break up. But could that spirit really be broken up? Whoever was arrested, there was always to be someone fresh to hold up the flag of Irish independence. Always someone a wearing of the green. And all the while, a steady toll was taken of those who sought to maintain British rule. And this was no way for British soldiers to go home. Feeling was such that women, who as much as passed the time of day with the black and tan, had their hair shaved off. And this was no way to treat women. In reprisals for rebel acts of violence, British troops set fire to Irish shops and houses. A poor land was made yet poorer, and this was no way to encourage trade. In distant Lancashire, warehouses went up in smoke as Irish supporters took to arson. Tit for tat, but this was no way to conduct business either. Then there was a Mr. McSwiney, the mayor of Cork, a fervent Sinn Féiner. So fervent, in fact, that when jailed in Brixton prison, he starved himself to death in many long and terrible days. When McSwiney's body returned to his native Cork, there were many troops and armored cars on hand in case there should be trouble. But there was no trouble, only a great and terrible sadness. In less than a year, feeling both in Ireland and Britain was to result in the Irish Free State, but that was in the future. And meanwhile, well, this was no way to treat His Worship, the Mayor of Cork. Plunge into peace, peace with plenty. But when George Lansbury and other union leaders went to Downing Street to discuss Britain's growing labour problems, a clash between police and demonstrators served to show that this was a peace by no means as promising as it might have been. Yes, there were many wrongs to right, and in the righting, heads to bandage and wounds to dress. But for most people, disillusionment had yet to come. Roll out the tanks, but not for war, for memorials or scrap or rides for happy holidaymakers at the seaside resorts. Yes, the spirit was one of peace and pleasure after a surfeit of war and worry. A spirit of youth bursting out all over in students' rags and putting household articles onto lampposts and steeples. Still, a year or so before, they might have been expending their energies throwing Mills bombs. Plunge into peace. A peace of weddings and setting up house and building families. A piece of having all those kids you'd put off having for so long until you felt the world was safe for them. Yes, that was the spirit I remember.
The more you have, the more you want. They say, and enough is as good as a feast any day. If you have any more, Mrs.